Welcome back to The Deep Dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident expert.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here.
So today is Thursday, February 26, 2026.
Right.
And usually, when you look at your calendar, you're checking schedules, maybe figuring out how many days are left until the weekend.
Or realizing you forgot a birthday.
Exactly. But today, we're doing something a bit different with our sources. We are drilling a core sample right into the bedrock of history.
I really like that image because if you treat history like geology and you drill down specifically on this exact date, February 26, you hit this remarkably dense layer of strata. I mean, it is crowded down there.
It really is. We've been going through this massive stack of sources today.
Yeah, we have legal texts, biographies, economic reports.
That's some musicology notes in here.
Right. And they all converge on this single day across different years, which suggests that February 26 isn't just a random square on the calendar.
No, it serves as this profound, almost perfect cross-section of the Black experience in America.
We're calling this concept the unbroken chain.
The unbroken chain.
Right. Because when you layer these events, stretching from the post-Civil War rubble all the way to the modern day, you see a collision of massive historical forces.
Yeah.
You see the fight for political enfranchisement, the invention of American music, the reclamation of identity, economic power, and then
modern tragedy.
Exactly.
It's basically a longitudinal study of American history, but playing out on the exact same frequency.
So we want to give you all a roadmap for the journey we're about to take.
All right, we are going to travel from the floors of Congress in 1869
down to a piano bench in New Orleans,
into a boxing ring in Miami,
through the very quiet, very serious halls of the Federal Reserve,
and finally to a neighborhood in Sanford, Florida.
And our mission here isn't just to memorize dates.
No, nobody wants a history lecture.
Exactly. The mission is to understand how these completely disparate events connect, how they tell a single, really complex story about struggle, excellence, and the literal fight for existence.
So let's jump in. Let's start at the very bottom of the timeline. Let's wind the clock all the way back to February 26th, 1869.
We're in Washington, D.C.
Right. The Civil War is over. But the country is, well, it's a complete mess.
Fragile is probably putting it mildly.
Yeah, I'm very fragile.
The Union is back together on paper, but the actual social fabric is totally shredded.
Reconstruction is in full swing.
It is, but it's facing massive, deeply entrenched resistance. And on this specific day, Congress makes a move that is theoretically supposed to fix the future of democracy.
They pass the 15th Amendment.
And they send it to the states for ratification.
I actually have the text of the source right here. It explicitly prohibits denying a citizen the right to vote based on, quote, race, color, or previous condition of servitude.
This is what we call the legislative bedrock.
It's bedrock.
That's the key takeaway from the legal text we reviewed. Before February 26, 1869, Black political participation was basically an experiment, or it was handled entirely state by state.
Right.
This amendment tried to make it a permanent constitutional reality.
It's the moment the U.S. government essentially officially declared we are a multiracial democracy.
On paper, at least.
Right, on paper. And we have to be real about this because I remember learning this in school as sort of a mission accomplished moment.
Oh, totally. The neat and tidy narrative.
Exactly. Like Lincoln freed the slaves, then Congress passed the amendments, and then everything was just fine until the 1960s.
Which is completely false.
Right. Looking at the deep dive analysis in these sources, it wasn't a magic wand.
Not even close. You could easily argue that passing the amendment was the easy part.
Enforcing it was the actual war.
Exactly. While this day in 1869 opened the door, it also triggered this immediate, highly organized, violent backlash in the South, the Jim Crow era.
This is where we see the rise of all those legal loopholes, right?
Correct. And it was very strategic. The amendment said you cannot stop people from voting because of their race.
So the states found other ways.
Right. State legislatures sat down and said, okay, fine, we won't stop you because of your race. We'll stop you because you can't pass this literally impossible literacy test.
Or a poll tax.
Or because your grandfather didn't vote, the grandfather clauses.
Which conveniently only applied to the exact people they didn't want voting.
Exactly. So while February 26, 1869 is the foundation, and it did allow for that brief, shining moment of Reconstruction where we actually saw Black senators and congressmen for the first time.
It also set the stage for a century of systemic disenfranchisement.
It's a harsh reminder from our legal sources that legislation is just ink on paper without the mechanics to enforce it.
Right. The sources make it clear that it took another 100 years, basically until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, to actually start closing those loopholes.
So 1869 gives us the theoretical political voice. It's the promise note.
The bedrock. But as you said earlier, you can build a lot of ugly things on top of bedrock if you aren't careful.
You really can.
Now, I want to slide our timeline forward. We're leaving the stiff collars of Congress, and we are going down to the lower 9th Ward of New Orleans.
I love this transition.
It's February 26, 1928.
A massive, massive shift. We're moving entirely out of the political sphere and into the cultural sphere.
Because on this day, Antoine Domino Jr. is born.
Better known to the world as Fats Domino.
Now, looking at these musicology notes we have, calling him just a rock and roll star feels like a huge undersell.
Oh, it's a massive undersell. The sources are pretty adamant about this. Without him, the genre as we know it simply does not exist.
He's the architect.
He really is. If you look at the actual music theory behind what he did, he was a French Creole piano prodigy. He took traditional rhythm and blues, which at the time was very swing heavy, very loose.
Yeah.
And he applied this driving, incredibly heavy backbeat to it.
That rolling piano style. I was actually listening to The Fat Man before we started recording. It came out in 1949.
And it just drives.
It absolutely drives. It has so much energy.
Right. If you listen to that triplet piano style, the sources argue that is the literal DNA of rock and roll.
Before Elvis Presley.
Long before Elvis walked into Sun's studio, before the Beatles, Fats Domino was laying down the blueprint in New Orleans.
And the commercial numbers in these reports are just staggering.
Over 65 million records sold. 65
million.
Yeah.
And remember the context for you listening. This is happening in America that is still deeply legally segregated.
We are talking about the era where those loopholes from 1869 are fully operational.
Right.
And that is the critical connection to our unbroken chain.
How so?
In 1869, the government tried to legislate equality, and it was violently resisted. But in 1928, with the birth of this man and eventually his sound, we see a totally different kind of integration.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You can segregate a bus, you can segregate a lunch counter, you can segregate a school, but you cannot segregate a radio wave.
That's such a great point. You had white teenagers in the 1950s listening to Fats Domino in their bedrooms. They are consuming Black culture, feeling Black joy, even if their own parents legally forbade them from associating with Black people socially.
It was cultural dominance through the back door. Fats Domino wasn't writing overt protest songs. He didn't stand on a political soapbox.
He was just undeniably excellent.
Exactly. He forced the global mainstream to calibrate its rhythm to his.
That's the classic soft power versus hard power dynamic.
Exactly.
1869 was hard power, laws, amendments, federal troops.
Yeah.
1928 and the career that followed was soft power, winning hearts and hips before winning minds.
And he did it with a smile.
Yeah.
The sources note that Fats was seen as non-threatening to the white establishment.
Which allowed that rhythm to slip right past the gatekeepers.
It was a Trojan horse. He was safe enough to get in the door, but once the music actually started playing, the cultural walls started coming down.
Okay, so we have the political vote, even if theoretical, and we have the undeniable cultural rhythm.
Right.
Now we are jumping to February 26, 1964. We are in Miami, Florida.
And the energy shifts dramatically here.
Yeah, we are moving from non-threatening to very, very threatening.
This is definitely not the smile of Fats Domino.
This is the morning after Cassius Clay shocked the entire world by defeating Sonny Liston.
And Liston was terrifying.
He was a monster in the ring, literally an ex-enforcer for the mob, unbeatable. And this 22-year-old kid just completely dismantles him.
But the historical significance of February 26 isn't just about what happened in the ring the night before.
No. The news breaking on the morning of the 26th is that the new heavyweight champion of the world is affiliated with the Nation of Islam.
He confirms it publicly on this exact day.
He announces that Cassius Clay is his slave name. He briefly takes the name Cassius X before eventually becoming Muhammad Ali.
To really understand how radical this was, you have to look at the historical role of Black athletes up to that point.
There's a very specific box they had to fit in.
Very specific. The implicit deal with white America was clear. You can be famous. Yes. You can be rich. You can even be a champion. But you have to be grateful. You have to be humble. And you must remain apolitical.
Like Joe Louis.
Exactly like Joe Louis. An American hero, but a quiet one. A symbol who didn't rock the boat.
And Ali took that deal and just lit it on fire.
He completely shredded it. On February 26, 1964, he basically looked at the press and said, I don't need your validation. I don't need your approval, and I don't even need your name.
I have my own God, my own name, and my own mind.
Because a total reclamation of identity.
So if 1869 was political and 1928 was cultural, 1964 is deeply personal. It's psychological.
It's the Declaration of Independence of the Self. And think about the incredible risk he was taking.
He had everything to lose.
The boxing commissions hated this. The mainstream media hated it. The sponsors were terrified. He was risking millions of dollars and his entire livelihood to say, I am who I say I am.
It connects right back to that 1869 promise.
It does.
The 15th Amendment said you are a citizen on paper. But Ali demanded to be accepted as a full human being in practice on his own terms. He absolutely refused to be just a compliant commodity.
He weaponized his athletic platform. He forced the world to look at a black man who wasn't asking for permission.
That kind of psychological sovereignty is a massive link in this unbroken chain.
It transformed the concept of the athlete. He wasn't just an entertainer anymore. He was a gladiator for civil rights and black identity.
So we've covered politics, culture, and identity.
But there's a crucial missing piece.
Right, because you can have all those things, but if you don't have the money, if you don't have the actual institutional power, you're still fundamentally vulnerable.
You can be world famous and completely broke.
Or you can be a registered voter with zero economic leverage in your community.
Which brings us perfectly to our next stop, just 2 years later, February 26, 1966.
We are back in Washington, D.C.
We're moving from the loud, sweaty boxing ring to the incredibly quiet halls of the Federal Reserve.
On this day, President Lyndon B. Johnson appoints Dr. Andrew F. Brimmer to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System.
The first black governor in the institution's history.
Now, I know talking about central banking and monetary policy isn't quite as visceral as talking about heavyweight boxing.
Oh, interest rates can be pretty thrilling if you're an economist.
Or if you're trying to buy your first house right now.
Very true. But seriously, in terms of the broader black experience, our economic sources highlight this as a seismic shift.
We are moving from pure civil rights, like the right to vote or sit at a lunch counter, to what some historians call silver rights.
The mechanics of institutional wealth, the right to manage the actual economy.
Let's break down what that practically means for you listening, because the Fed controls the money supply.
They set the interest rates.
Right. They determine the cost of borrowing for every single business, every bank, and every homeowner in America.
It's the plumbing of the entire capitalist system. It is the engine room.
And putting Brimmer in that room wasn't just some token diversity hire.
Not at all. Dr. Brimmer was a brilliant economist who brought a highly specific, very necessary perspective to federal economic policy.
Our sources show he actually analyzed the tangible economic cost of discrimination.
He argued mathematically that racism was essentially a massive market inefficiency.
That it was dragging down the entire gross national product.
Exactly. So he wasn't just there to be the black voice in the room. He was there to prove with hard data that systemic inequality is fundamentally bad for everyone's wallet.
It extends our chain into the absolute highest echelons of federal power. It's breaking the economic ceiling.
You have 1869 providing the political lever.
And 1966 providing the hand on the economic lever.
It really feels like the final piece of the puzzle, doesn't it?
It does. If you look at this trajectory we just built, 1869 is politics, 1928 is culture, 1964 is identity, 1966 is economics.
If you were charting this on a graph, the line is just going steadily up and to the right.
It looks like a clear victory, like a tidy, resolved narrative.
But history is almost never a straight line.
No. And this deep dive takes a very sharp, very tragic turn here.
Because we have one final stop on our timeline for February 26th.
And it forces us to deeply rethink everything we just talked about.
It brings us right to the painful paradox we mentioned at the very beginning of the show. It shatters that clean upward line.
We are moving to February 26, 2012. We are in Sanford, Florida.
It's a rainy evening.
This is the tragedy of Trayvon Martin.
Most of our listeners are familiar with the broad strokes of this story, but the sources emphasize that the mundane details are exactly what make it so important to restate.
Trayvon is 17 years old.
He's just a kid.
He's walking home from a 7-Eleven. He has a bag of Skittles and an Arizona iced tea.
He is completely unarmed.
He isn't committing any crime. He's just visiting family.
He is simply existing in a public space.
And he is stalked, confronted, and fatally shot by a neighborhood watch volunteer.
And later, as the legal records show, the subsequent acquittal of the killer on the grounds of self-defense sparked sheer international outrage.
Our sociological sources identify this exact moment, this specific date in 2012, as the tragic spark, the true catalyst for the modern movement for Black lives.
But when you place it in the context of our unbroken chain, the realization is just devastating.
It's incredibly jarring. We literally just spent the last 15 minutes talking about how Black Americans gained constitutional voting rights, conquered global music charts, fiercely reclaimed their personal identities, and took control at the Federal Reserve.
And yet in 2012.
With a Black president sitting in the White House, no less.
Right. A Black teenager cannot walk home with a snack without facing a fatal existential threat.
That is the critical synthesis of all these sources. That is the hard truth of this deep dive.
You can have Andrew Brimmer analyzing markets at the Fed. You can have Muhammad Ali as a beloved global icon. You can have civil rights laws written in stone since 1869.
But none of those macro victories guaranteed the micro-safety of Trayvon Martin's physical body in that specific moment.
It seems like those foundational victories we mapped out, they built the house, but they didn't necessarily lock the door against violence.
They built political structures and economic pathways.
But they didn't eradicate that underlying lethal assumption of threat, the baseline assumption that led to Trayvon being followed in the first place.
The 15th Amendment didn't stop the bullet.
Fats Domino's records didn't stop it.
So when we look at February 26th holistically, it is not just a celebration of progress.
No, it's a massive warning against complacency.
It teaches us that history is simultaneous.
We so often think in chapters like, oh, we fixed the voting thing in the 60s, then we fixed the culture thing, now we're done.
But February 26 proves that you can be fighting for complex economic equity in a federal boardroom, while on the exact same calendar day, decades later, you are still fighting for basic physical survival on a suburban street corner.
The layers coexist. We are essentially living in 1869, 1928, 1964, 1966, and 2012, all at the exact same time.
That is the unbroken chain.
It's not just a sequence of triumphant victories. It's a chain of ongoing complex engagement on multiple fronts.
Trayvon Martin's death reminded the entire world that the basic right to exist safely in a Black body, is the baseline that still desperately needs defending, regardless of all the other historical accolades.
It's a really heavy realization. You look at the single date, and you see the absolute pinnacle of American potential.
You see the musical genius of Fats Domino, the unmatched courage of Ali, the deep intellect of Brimmer.
And right alongside it, you see the enduring, unresolved shadow of American tragedy.
They are completely woven together.
You can't untangle them. To actually understand the Black experience based on these sources, you have to hold the profound joy of the progress and the devastating pain of the tragedy in the exact same hand.
So as we wrap up today's deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
Something that builds on all this, but looks at the mechanics of how we even remember it.
When you think about the unbroken chain of February 26, look at how the medium of memory has shifted.
In 1869, the fight was recorded in the quiet ink of congressional parchment.
In 1928, it was pressed into the grooves of vinyl records.
By 1964 and 1966, it was broadcast globally through television cameras and newsprint.
And by 2012, the reality of the experience was documented through cell phone records, 911 audio, and the digital footprint of social media.
The technology we use to capture history keeps advancing. The resolution gets sharper.
But the underlying human struggle remains strikingly consistent. It makes you wonder, as the mediums we use to record our lives become even more instant and inescapable, will that visibility finally break the cycle of tragedy, or just provide a clearer lens on the same unresolved fights?
It's a question of whether our advanced memory actually changes human behavior or just catalogs it better.
Something to think about as you go about your day and check your own calendar. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.